welcome to Part 2 of Classroom Management, which will address work time. Remember, in Part 1 of this module, we put into action ways to organize your classroom's physical environment and the materials that all contribute to giving you more time to plan and deliver high-quality instruction. Let's move on by briefly reviewing the indicators for Part 2. All teachers use a variety of instructional modes. When waiting for assistance from the teacher, students are occupied with curriculum-related activities provided by the teacher. Typically, instructional modes are categorized as either whole class or work time. The most effective instruction involves a blend of both whole class instruction and work time instruction. Whole class instruction is used to deliver new material to the entire class at the same time. We'll spend a few minutes on whole class instruction here. But because we receive a lot of questions about how to keep a classroom managed during work time when there is a lot of simultaneous activity occurring, that's where we'll spend most of our time today. Rest assured, we discuss whole class instruction in greater detail in the Instructional Delivery module. The amount of time dedicated to whole class instruction and work time will vary from day to day depending on the lesson. But it is clear from the research and the evidence that the use of both is a major component of successful student learning. Using both requires thoughtful planning, as you learned in the first module, Instructional Planning. Speaking of which, we provided you with several planning tools in the Instructional Planning module. Let's quickly review them here, because good planning is truly a prerequisite for effective classroom management. Remember, these tools are included in your workbook, both instructional planning and classroom management, as well as electronically. Use the weekly class schedule to identify which activities will be delivered using whole class instruction and which will be delivered using work time. The whole class instruction weekly outline helps to plan the content and delivery of whole class instruction, the mode from which work time activities flow. Use the learning plan grid to organize and align lesson objectives with the activities implemented in both whole class and work time modes. All right, on to work time. Work time occurs when the teacher removes himself from the direct instruction of new material and supports the continuation of learning through group, independent, or computer-based activities. In work time, students are able to practice and advance their learning with those activities that are aligned to objectives and differentiated according to student learning needs. Let's see work time in action. As you can see, this teacher uses a variety of instructional modes. Here, he starts in whole class instruction that is teacher-led. Once he has finished his whole class instruction, his students direct themselves into various work areas. They may choose to work in small group teacher-led activities, small group student-led activities, or they may choose to work independently. Did that clip give you an idea of how students can be engaged in learning while working in various settings, from whole class to independent? In a minute, we're going to take a closer look at classrooms that are engaged in work time activities. You will again see students working in groups, some who are working independently, and others who are busy at the computer. But first, let's spend some time on strategies that teachers use to transition students from whole class instruction into work time groups. During work time, each student follows a student learning plan to engage in group activities and independent work that the teacher has specifically assigned for that student, based on the student's progress toward the week's objectives. So that the teacher has maximum flexibility in targeting a student's assignments to learning activities that best match the student's level of progress for each objective, grouping is fluid. Fluid grouping means that student groups are changed regularly and according to each student's progress relative to each objective. Groups are either teacher-directed or student-directed. In teacher-directed group work, students are grouped homogeneously. In other words, they have something in common with regard to their learning and are engaged in activities that require teacher involvement, either reteaching or advanced activities. In student-directed groups, students work together on activities without direct instruction from the teacher. Student-directed groups are often heterogeneous, and cooperative learning techniques are employed. Let's listen as this teacher shares how she uses homogeneous grouping or teacher-directed grouping.
Well, I have my groups strongly organized, so when the kids come to reading group, I have a set of rules for them. I have a set of incentive cards, so I know exactly what they're doing and how well they're doing it. I have their own books ready for the reading group in the bookshelf ready to go, pencils or highlighters, those things. I have a chart with all their names so they know exactly what reading group they're in, so they can just come right away to group, so we can make these just like smooth transitions from place to place. From down to the way the kids are sitting, the kids are grouped together in heterogeneous groups at the desk, so they can work together with low, middle, high partners. So everything does have a place and a purpose.
And now we'll listen in on how a teacher uses heterogeneous grouping. That is, when students are grouped according to mixed abilities, skills, interests, or progress in her classroom.
I try to make sure that I have different levels sitting together, like a strong and a medium level student or a strong and a weaker level student, so that they can actually tutor each other, kind of like peer tutoring. Sometimes I do allow them to work on the warm-up for 1 or 2 minutes by themselves, and then I'll say you cannot use your notes, but you can only consult with the person beside you to answer any answers, or if you have any questions or anything that you did not understand or that you did not grasp, you can talk to your neighbor and see if they can help you with those answers. And then we'll go over it as a class.
In grouping, whether it's homogeneous teacher-directed group work or heterogeneous student-led group work, the teacher continuously regroups students based on their current mastery of objectives. That's a lot to consider, isn't it? Take a minute to take some notes in your workbook about grouping and how it can help you manage work time activities. Remember our layout of a well-managed classroom in Part 1? In order to manage our classrooms effectively and meet the needs of all of our students, our classrooms need to accommodate learning centers or work time areas. Let's listen as this teacher explains why organized work time areas are so effective in helping her meet her students' needs.
First time, my students take responsibility for their learning. In this environment, students have a choice in what they're going to do and where they're going to take their learning, because it's allowed me the opportunity to let go of the reins a little bit and give them more of a choice in their learning and where they're going to take it. Also, it's also opened up an opportunity for me to work more individually with students one-on-one. With the learning centers, it's a nice opportunity to keep the students active and involved in their learning while I can give the individual attention that the students need. It also helps me keep up with their diagnostic need because it keeps me in tune with the students one-on-one.
She finds that work time, or centers as she calls them, affords her both the opportunity to work with her students individually and the ability to keep better track of each of her students' learning progress. And did you notice that she found that her students performed better once she loosened the reins a bit and started employing work time? Now that you have a sense of the importance of this kind of learning environment, let's take a look at it in action. The following video segment pans a classroom with students in writing group activities and independent work that the teacher has specifically designed for them, based on each student's progress toward the week's objectives. Here, the teacher is working with a group of students who all demonstrated an understanding of the writing assignment. She is giving them instructions on enhanced learning activities. To the right, you will see a small group of students working independently on leveled activities to meet their needs. In the center of the classroom, you will notice a student who is working independently on a computer-based activity that is targeted specifically for her learning needs. In the back of the room, you will see two students working together. In this particular case, one student is sharing writing strategies with the other. And over here on this side of the room, we have yet another teacher-directed small group. These students demonstrated a need for further instruction on how to meet the activity's objectives. As you can see, it is possible to manage work time activities effectively. Let's take a look at another classroom engaged in work time activities. Again, in this teacher's room, you will see that students are working together in a small group, all sharing ideas about how to write a summary of a story they've read. In the back of the room, you will notice a teacher working with a small group of students. This particular group of students needs support in reaching their objectives for this reading and writing activity. In the back center of the room, you'll notice yet another teacher-led small group. These students are receiving instruction for enhanced learning activities. And in the center of the room, you will notice students working independently. Can you see how the organization of their classroom supported their ability to manage their classroom during work time? Now that you've had the chance to see work time in action, get out your workbook and take a minute to jot down some of the things you've observed in action. Once you have recorded what you've seen, answer the following questions. What strategies do these teachers employ that you want to take back to your classroom? What support would you need to get started?